This is a story about growing up. No, that's not true. Well, it is, but this is a story about mental health. No, damn it, I'm doing a poor job here. This is a story about a failed attempt at a rival character. I mean, did he fail? I don't even believe in that thesis, but... See this? This is a product. It's a toy for children made to look like two socket wrenches were turned into a sword. Then pull the handle down and poof, it's a gun. But what's this? A trading card? I wonder what this does. Makes more noises than that, but you get the point. It's a toy for the series Kamen Rider, which you know if you clicked on this video. But if your friend did, or you're my mom sending this to someone like, I don't know, my Aunt Joan, Kamen Rider is a superhero franchise. It is made by one of the largest entertainment companies in the world, in tandem with one of the largest toy and video game manufacturers in the world. The show has existed in some form or another for the past 55 years, creating a generational property with so many different iterations. One person's favorite can be another person's bastard stepson who fails to do anything right.
You're too good for this world.
The season I'm talking about, Kamen Rider Gotchard, technically counts as the 38th iteration. Its toy line uses a predatory business practice to sell children blind boxes full of multicolored cardboard with artificially inflated value. Cardboard they need to use the toys, which also costs at least $30 American with its own separate cards. And throughout the year, the 50-episode tie-in TV series aired, more cards and more toys were debuted to use in tandem with the base toy. And before you ask, no! There is no card game you can play with these cards. You are purely collecting them because in the show itself, that is what the main character is doing. So if you want to be like him and have all these crazy adventures with your new friends, the talking cactus and the giant fucking robot, you gotta buy the cards. Did I mention there are also rarities and exclusive cards based on other Kamen Riders that make unique sounds, especially with another toy?
I can't take it anymore.
Why this base level capitalist critique? It's because the series, no matter how much weight I want to put on the artistic merit of its creation or the artists behind it, will always be seen as a product. Yet somehow, a heart beats underneath the plastic. Someone inside that studio structure that made the show, or the creative staff on it, managed to make something that not only sells toys, but says something. Even if it's basic.
Eat your teeth.
So why am I talking about this toy? Because the character attached to it, Kamen Rider Valvarad, has an arc that says something. And to explain that, I need to explain his character arc. So this is the point where I'm going to drop all pretense and tell you, if you haven't already, watch the show! There are ways to watch it, wink, wink, but I'm not going to be reading a Wikipedia summary for you. I'm going into this sucker as if you know what I'm talking about, and explaining it from the perspective of Spanner from a narrative level. I will be bringing up production stuff like who's writing it, interesting things that happen when developing Spanner's arc, and production stuff when I feel like it's fun, but that's it. So if that's not good enough background noise for you, I don't know what is. Now, let's have a genuine discussion, shall we, about a character that, love him or hate him, makes quite the annoying impression. Kurogane Spanner, aka Kamen Rider's greatest fraud. Hotaro Ichinose is a very stupid boy. And I love him. He's the main character of a series that was intentionally made to be easier to consume. Breezy, fun, whimsical even. He was made to be that easy breezy boy, as Kyoka calls him, but he's not without growth. Hotaro was challenged both externally through Gleon, the Alchemy Association, and the topic of this video, but internally despite his seemingly stagnant exterior. The theme of Gotchard, as intended by Hiroki Uchida and Keiichi Hasegawa, as washed as he is, was the idea of change versus permanence. That stagnance is the enemy, and that the only way to truly achieve your goals is to grow along with them. By the end of the main series, Hotaro's goal hasn't changed, but his methods and general beliefs surrounding it have. He's realized that human-chemi coexistence isn't possible yet, but maybe someday, and he'll keep working toward that possible future no matter what life throws at him, so long as he's a person people can rely on. Like Shoichi from Agito, which was apparently intentional. It's not that deep, and not even that thorough with Hotaro, but there are moments where Hotaro is challenged and through growth becomes stronger. It's the basis for any sort of Kamen Rider series, or at least in the modern era, making stuff as simple as a commercial for a new toy momentous, a culmination of a character arc. And the same can be said for someone like Spanner, who is posed as Hotaro's rival character, someone that solely exists to challenge the ideals of our main character. In action-adventure stories like Kamen Rider or any sort of traditional Japanese battle manga series, the rival has some kind of inherent advantage above the lead. He's smarter, or stronger, or has some unique power that makes them stand out. Spanner is no different. Unlike Hotaro, who is Muggle-born and without magic experience, Spanner already comes from the rigid structure of alchemy society. And unlike Rine, whose father was widely respected before he betrayed the academy, Spanner's parents weren't as respected. They were low-born, working for the positions they inevitably got, and in turn provided a good education for their son. It took Spanner working non-stop under Kyoka to reach the level of Special A-Rank Alchemist, which seemingly only one person can hold at a time. That alone, without the seemingly needless black flames he's later stated to have, and the death of his parents and all that, gives him an advantage over Hotaro. Spanner knows how hard he needs to work to achieve anything, so seeing Hotaro go against the grain so much for the sake of his wild, naive dream easily puts the two at odds. One is a staunch traditionalist who is trusted with power for the sake of the powers that be. One is the ever-changing, constantly fumbling future that hopes to be better than what came before. Change versus permanence. So with all that in mind, you'd expect the two's dynamic would be compelling enough to create some interesting character moments, and in turn, a good toy commercial for the kids at home. Right? Yes. And no. While Spanner's aura farming moments, as the kids call it these days, do get across his supposed skill level at first, especially his first debut as Valvarad, that quickly melts away the longer he persists. As a rival character, Spanner's built to be overcome, for the lead to surpass in some significant way, and in turn push the rival to do the same. It's why they're rivals and not enemies. There's a cyclical, beneficial nature to their relationship. That's clear in episode 3, with Spanner's first confrontation with Hotaro leading to Hotaro gaining some resolve for his dreams, and in turn, Spanner saving his ass when there's another amalgam. This fight against the Mariner amalgam is a good display of Spanner's skill, as well as his stated motivation to protect Rine, but ends up being kind of sad in hindsight. While the idea that Spanner pushes Hotaro to be better will persist, Spanner's supposed skill level, as shown by this fight at least, will not. Every subsequent fight as base-level Valvarad beyond this point will result in 3 outcomes. 1. The enemy gets away, especially if they're a major antagonist. 2. Spanner needs help to finish off the enemy, and in turn denies needing said help. And 3, which is the most important part of this equation, he loses. Badly. Let's go over each of these points. The first one is understandable. Given the typical structure of a Kamen Rider series, every season must be close to 50 episodes. So having a major antagonist die, say, 8 episodes into the show's run is a good waste of a character, and in turn their actor, the costume design behind them, etc. In order to maintain that structure, the bad guy needs to lose a fight but still be able to get away. It prolongs conflict, and in turn creates more moments for our main character to shine. It's called Kamen Rider Gotchard after all, not Kamen Rider Valvarad. A bulk of the important moments are going to go to the main character. Having the rival character dispatch a major foe so easily undermines the main character's abilities, and in turn their growth in the face of such a strong rival. That's why there's also a need for help from the main character, which Spanner's focus episode number 1 A-Rank Twisted Star gets across perfectly. In order to slowly build toward a sense of camaraderie between the two, there needs to be a sense of unity. It's the cyclical nature of the rival trope. I scratch your back, you scratch mine, even if I didn't ask for it. Can you stop doing that? It's really uncomfortable for me.
Dual wield!
The problem with the third ending of any fight Spanner gets into is that once Spanner actually loses a one-on-one fight, that's it. You ever heard of jobbing? It's a pro wrestling term, one that indicates that the person losing the fight was dictated to. It's been co-opted by the superhero fandom at large to describe characters that lose for the sake of setting stakes. Your Martian Manhunters, if you will. How strong someone is, and in turn how strong the heroes need to be in order to fight back. Spanner jobs for the first time during episode 12, when the gang first fight, and lose, against Kamen Rider Dread, this time being the meek Sabimaru. When Spanner loses against Dread, it's a big moment. It indicates that the enemy that is the Abyssal Sisters have gone so strong thanks to their overarching scheme that even the ones stated to be the strongest in their story can no longer handle it. It's what sets up UFO-X and Super Gotchard as a concept, and there's a really cool moment of growth for Hotaro after this. Failing to save Sabimaru from the grasp of Dread and the gang barely escaping with their lives, Spanner chastises Hotaro's dream of human-chemical coexistence and the idea he'll be a big-shot alchemist, something he bragged about being in the past. In this moment, Spanner stresses the life or death stakes of their story, the easy-breezy attitude of the narrative shifting to something slightly darker. Spanner leaves the scene despite the gang trying to defend Hotaro, but Hotaro even admits that Spanner is right. He is naive, there will be consequences to his actions, and he needs to be prepared for them. But he'll keep fighting anyway. It's a moment that of course sets the stage for Sabimaru's rescue and the first defeat of Dread and everything with Gleon after. However, for the sake of argument, it's important to note for how it affects Spanner. It motivates him to kill Dread no matter what. something that he immediately gets invalidated for when, during his next confrontation with the possessed Sabimaru, he is stopped mid-finisher by Minato, trusting in the same naive dream that almost got the group killed last time. What a ridiculous joke.
He said it! He said it!
You can see why from Spanner's perspective this is annoying, right? Even if Hotaro is indeed right in the end, they both don't know that for certain, as well as the fact that Spanner almost ended the conflict in an instant. This also ties into Minato's greater arc, which we'll get into later, so it does get a pass since it's based in character drama. Yet at the same time, that character drama exists to prop up Hotaro. It proves that, in a way, Spanner cannot win so long as Hotaro is involved. Hell, he can't even defend Kudorine anymore, the person he was assigned to protect this whole time. Spanner cannot solo anyone unless the narrative deems the villain in question unimportant enough for Spanner to kill off. It stagnates Spanner, making him seem ineffectual. It almost goes against the themes of the series. But luckily, the writers acknowledge that concern, smartly building that consistent frustration over Spanner's ability into his general arc. If Hotaro manages to win almost every single time, and Kudorine manages to develop her own way of defending herself, the story naturally asks, where does that leave Spanner? Does his rank mean nothing? Is he just a fraud?
You need to shut the fuck up!
Up until episode 20, we don't know a lot about Spanner. I mean, we know who he is through his actions, but not his backstory beyond episode 6's brief flashback. It takes until episode 14 for us to even hear Kyoka's name, and episode 16 for us to see her in person. Though you can argue her influence was felt throughout the show through Spanner's actions, things change when she joins the show proper. Spanner is allowed to be softer, kinder to someone in a genuine way instead of trying to appeal to people like he did with Kudorine. And by that, I mean poorly. It makes him more personable, and his arrogance more a product of being an only child in a non-traditional upbringing. The more we learn about his dynamic with Kyoka, her working to the point of ignoring things like eating or sleeping at regular intervals, her dedication to teaching Spanner codes and ethics through games of skill, her connection to Spanner's greater backstory that, as of that first appearance, we don't know, the more we understand who Spanner really is. A homeschool kid. Someone who is probably really smart, but due to their circumstances, has poor social skills and a weird perception of maturity. Kyoka wasn't prepared to be a mother figure of any kind. That just wasn't her plan. But given the circumstances that led to Spanner coming to stay with her, she tried her best, even if it required Spanner having to quickly mature as a result of living under her. If someone who can barely take care of herself has to raise a child, that child is going to have some dependence issues. Especially if there's trauma. Episode 16 is significant not just due to Kyoka's first appearance, but Gleon's and Hotaro actively challenging Spanner's authority over him in the face of total doom. Spanner not only jobs against Gleon, he gets completely washed from it. Hotaro telling him if he really wants to play hero, he should save the civilians. And he still turns to stone. This episode was written by Hiroki Uchida, and you can tell, unlike episodes written by Hasegawa, or God forbid Akiko Inoue, Uchida manages to balance his large cast and give every major character a sprinkle of focus. Spanner's arc being the one to focus on. This one moment with Hotaro completely rewrites their dynamic. It permanently places Spanner on the back foot, as Hotaro charges ahead given his responsibility as the titular Kamen Rider. This, along with Hotaro's win over Gleon with his future self next episode, and Rine's inevitable in-show debut as P-Bandai exclusive rider Kamen Rider Majade the episode after that, further pushes Spanner away. Kyoka admired the growth of both riders so much that she believed that she could finish the belt meant for Spanner based on their data. People that were once weaker than Spanner are now being used as an example for how to make him stronger. It's something that not only depresses Spanner in narrative, but pushes him to improve as a fighter. On his own, of course. His arrogance is a product of stubbornness. His unwillingness to be anything less than the best. Something instilled in him by his parents in their dying moments. Let's not beat around the bush. Spanner has PTSD. It's the most child-friendly way they could portray something as sensitive as post-traumatic stress disorder, but in the narrative functions the same way. Spanner's parents were murdered in front of him by an immortal madman hoping to turn the entire world into gold. He had the vague memory of this incident rewritten to be something as simple as his parents going abroad, but the abandonment issues still remained. He never heard from his parents ever again, and that manifested in nightmares of his parents dying that would keep him awake at night, crying in Kyoka's arms. Kyoka didn't intend on turning Spanner into a soldier of the system, but she raised him in alchemy society. So to prevent Spanner from ever being as vulnerable as she was, or God forbid his parents, Kyoka did what she did best: build something to help people out of whatever scrap she could find. The title Valvarad itself is an onomatopoeia of the Japanese term bada bada, which means to scatter or destroy. Spanner's name in English literally translates to Black Steel Spanner, so Kyoka took what scraps remained of the traumatized boy she saved and melded them into a mask of virtue. Someone prepared for the harsh realities of the Alchemy Association's grip on society, but also able to overcome the same hurdles as parents did. As a result, Kyoka created one of the most dedicated soldiers to the ideals of the association, while at the same time challenging them for the corruption within their ranks. Spanner, for all his faults, persisted, became stronger because of his gracious teacher and his own dedication. He was able to move up the ranks of Alchemy Society and prove to them that he's needed to achieve their goals. But he never coped. The mind-wiping guaranteed that until anyone poked the bear, Spanner would not confront the very reasons he chose to fight. More than just abandonment issues fueling his desire for status, but survivor's guilt. So when Gleon creates the Angel Amalgam and makes Spanner relive his childhood trauma, the mask of virtue that Kyoka helped forge falls off, revealing a vulnerable, crying boy underneath. One that Gleon takes advantage of and turns against the people around him. Around this time, Spanner already got his ass kicked by Minato, who he originally considered his lesser, but grew to trust over time. Now Minato, his own guilt being twisted by Gleon to enact his sick fantasies, is being used to torture Spanner, to use what knowledge he has of the boy and his upbringing, given his close relationship to Kyoka, and to put him through the worst hell imaginable. Also, Gleon can tame those dark flames. Flames that are barely even explained in the end, and how they got into Spanner is a complete crapshoot, but whatever. Spanner's at his lowest. He turns the people he cares about away when he needs them most, and as said people try to rally and make him feel better, it's up to a bitter ruse from Minato to shake Spanner out of his state. With the simple lie that Kyoka, the one person Spanner is afraid of losing most, being dead, Spanner is forced to confront his grief head on. Add the impossible alchemy enacted by his parents' zombies to make him remember the truth, Spanner reaches through his grief and finds his resolve. Understanding that Gleon not only stole his parents' futures away, but Kudofuga, Minato's students, Kyoka, and maybe even the world if he doesn't stop him. So, he vows to fight for the fallen, to make sure Gleon's plans never come to pass, and to do so with his own power. It's here where Mad Wheel, the talking fucking car that Spanner has been ignoring because he views alchemies as tools, digivolving due to his magic flames and lighting his sword on fire. This Chemi, along with several others because the toy he's about to get needs several other forms, resonated with his newfound goals and wanted to see him grow. Spanner is just like, okay, at this moment, but it's important to note for later. Kick-ass fight scene ensues, kick-ass toy commercial ensues where Spanner gets revenge on the Angel Amalgam, and thankfully Kyoka is still alive to see how much Spanner has grown. I mean, he took off his goofy tie, I think he's grown a bit. Spanner reconciles with Kyoka, understanding the compromises she had to make to raise him. Sure, that doesn't excuse the implication of the mind-wiping as a moral thing, but Spanner understands the ramification of Chemi law on the world of man. She forgives him from basically running away pretty easily, because of course she does. And everything from here on out for Spanner seems pretty great. After 20-some-odd episodes, Spanner has deepened as a character and given not only a power-up, but a reason to root for him. He's someone who's overcome immense trauma and has come out the other end stronger. He wants to make sure no one ever goes through the same pain he's experienced, and that eventually turns him against the very system he works for. He's still an arrogant ass, but he's finally been allowed a chance to shine. Arguably, Spanner isn't a fraud because of his consistent failures. Rather, he's a fraud for lying to himself for so long, overcoming that trauma in order to become something more, to win a fight all on his own after 17 episodes. And then he loses again.
I can't take this shit no more, man.
After Spanner gets his moment in the sun, he's back to being the guy who jobs so Hotaro can solve the conflict later. Even when he's allowed to kill Amalgam by himself, it has to be in a group fight. And even then, he has to lose afterward. The only fights he comes close to winning are against the Abyssal Sisters, whose own status as threats in the series have gone down with Spanner's. While their losses also culminate in some interesting arcs for our three ladies, in the context of Spanner's effectiveness as a rival character, it doesn't do him any favors. The narrative has reinforced this idea that Spanner is only allowed to win when he's able to have a toy commercial about it. The rest of his fights are just so the plot happens, and Hotaro saves the day. Nothing more, nothing less. Even when he's trying to play politician, something Spanner opted to do so he could prevent another incident like what happened 10 years ago, it takes until one of the Alchemy Association's heads to die for there to be any meaningful status quo shift. All Spanner's character amounts to before the final 10 episodes of Gotchard, and I'm being generous with that allotment, is a wheel spinning in service of an arc that he'll never truly fulfill. Because at the end of the day, he won't be the one to stop Gleon, the one who stole all of these people's futures. Hotaro will, because he's the main character. Now, Spanner does more than just lose fights during this stretch of time. He even gets to win one final time. But to explain what happened in that fight, and in turn how the series proper ends for Spanner, I need to talk about another character. Yes, it's time to talk about Loxus. Loxus is an interesting character because she's a product of two people, Keiichi Hasegawa and
Elisa Sakamaki.
Hasegawa, due to his inclusion in the writing of Gotchard very early on, that allowed him to overlook the idea the series was about initially. And as a result, the vague quest to search for chemis was changed to have some kind of villain, one that tied into the themes of 3 they were already exploring. 3 leads, 3 ingredients for alchemy, 3 points on a triangle, etc. This created the sisters on paper, but part of the reason they created this group of 3 was due to one particular actor's audition. Alice Sakamaki made that good of an impression that the writers felt bad they couldn't give her a role. So they wrote her one anyway, finding a child actor Hasegawa loved from a Japanese version of Doogie Howser and a stunt actor they were personally recommended to fill the other 2 sisters' roles. As a result of this miraculous birth and a constant war between Hasegawa and producer Yosuke Minato on whether they should live or die, the way the sisters functioned in the plot was constantly evolving throughout production. Why am I explaining this? Because it puts into perspective a lot of what happens with Loxus. Her distinct relationship with Spanner, written in episodes by Hasegawa, her drama with her siblings as a result of the show's overall antagonist changing, her attempted redemption and use of the Valve Rusher to give Alice Sakamaki a reason to stay relevant to the plot, her death, which Sakamaki, the producers, and Hasegawa decided on. All of these things paint the character of Loxus in an interesting way, that like the show she was from, she too was evolving as time went on. It makes her untimely end all the more tragic, and all the more frustrating as a result of how she gets to that point. Loxus starts off as a sadist, entrapping people to become amalgams with vengeful personalities, and in turn wreaking havoc for her own amusement. She's first interrupted by Spanner in episode 6, where he outright says acts of vengeance are against his virtue. Funny how that works. He then runs into her again during episode 8, when she's collecting amalgam material for the Dread Driver. This is where her sadistic attitude is turned on Spanner, officially making him her dog. Woof. She then fights Spanner again the next episode just to fuck with him as he searches for answers, inadvertently giving her them when she triple transmutes. She manages to get away again, impressed by Spanner, but then immediately helps make the Dread Driver, which she later uses to kick his ass in episode 14. Well after he first lost to Dread. And that was against Sabi Maru. He's redeemed in episode 15 somewhat by helping save the day after limping a solid few miles from the city into the forest, but Loxus did get one up on him. It establishes this compelling dynamic between the two, mirrored in later joint arcs as members of their trinity. Each member of the Abyssal Sisters are assigned in one way or another to a respective rider. With Hotaro, it's his love for the people in his life being paired against Clotho's love for her family, fighting to keep that family together as part of her goal. With Rine, it's much more literal, being the model for which Atropos was made, but her devotion to her father leading her to carve her own path instead of devoting herself solely to her father's wishes. And with Loxus and Spanner, it's two people pretending to be strong, allowing themselves to be vulnerable. The only difference is that Spanner's vulnerability is rewarded by a new toy, and Loxus's vulnerability is awarded by death. The two are mirrored in terms of helplessness during episode 16, when Loxus just becomes a body for Gleon to use, and Spanner is brushed aside by Hotaro after he failed against the Orochi amalgam. Until episode 21, the two are knocked around and given reason to fear their given place, pushed toward change instead of keeping things the way they are. With Spanner, it's a toy commercial. He overcomes his trauma, but goes against his ideals for the sake of a new goal. For Loxus, it's a bit more subdued. After fearing being replaced by Spanner of all people when he turned into the Wheel Amalgam, she trusts in Minato now instead of her family, resolving to not be killed now that she's outlived her usefulness to her abusive father. This culminates in episode 27 with the debut of Platinum Gotchard. As Spanner learns to put his trust fully in Hotaro against Gleon, Loxus does the same with Minato, fully switching sides, giving Alice Sakamaki plenty of scenes along the way to show off her acting chops. But a problem emerged. With Gleon, the man Spanner sought revenge against, and the man Loxus feared now dead, what will the two do thereafter? Given the two's on-screen chemistry, and of course the further division of each sister's goals, Spanner and Loxus's place became clear. With each other. Kyoka is used to picking up the pieces, so taking in another stray like Loxus made sense. Only now, she has to teach one dog how to cohabitate with the other. This has put Spanner in the middle of Loxus's conflicts with her sisters before, but now it's for the sake of seeing whatever the hell his teacher believes is there. Fate that somehow gave her a Valve Rusher, and in turn teaming up during the Legend 3-parter. This use of the Valve Rusher and a unique suit for her is, again, an evolution of the character that could only happen during production. Given the nature of Loxus' creation and later fan reception, her evolution into the second Valvarad made Alice Sakamaki's screen presence all the more defined. She's not just fighting for her Dark Master or for fighting's sake anymore, she's fighting for the virtue of being human, something that Spanner, as a result of knowing her, learns to value more and more. Respecting her and her inevitable gotcha she discovers as a result of regaining her memories. It's a good arc shared between the two that still endears us to Spanner, while in the greater plot, he's causing nothing but friction in the main cast. So the Dark Flames. Even though we don't know much, we do know one thing. It comes from the bad guys. Not just any bad guy, but the bad guys. Learning that after the first defeat of Gleon certainly shake things up for Spanner, being asked over and over again by Gigist to join the dark side given his shared power, something that makes Spanner start to feel somewhat insecure. He may have acknowledged the trauma that led to his stunted development, but knowing the reason why he couldn't sooner just makes him more insecure. He views the Dark Flames as something inherently wrong with him. So once again, instead of dealing with his emotions in a reasonable way, he turned inward, decided that the only thing he could do was bottle it up and power through. But like last time, ignoring the problem only made things worse. The incident at Congo Labs, something he was opposed to the efforts of given their violation of Chemi law, led to Gleon once again gaining the upper hand. Kajiki regaining his memories made him double down on the idea of mind wiping, when just several episodes earlier, he was angry at the idea of it happening to him. His justification being adhering to Chemi law, something he claims he hasn't changed on since the beginning. In spite of his hatred for the higher-ups who refused to budge on any issue, no matter how hard he tried, Spanner still clings to the idea of Chemi law, something his parents upheld to protect the world. To protect him. As Loxus slowly accepted the idea of being human, Spanner slowly did as well. He understood the reasons why his parents fought and died. And after Kyoka is hurt by the general public when the whole world learns the truth, he can't forgive himself. He couldn't protect what little he had. Now that the world knows what they've been fighting for, he needs to protect them as well. And despite Loxus and Kyoka and the entire cast's misgivings on what he's about to do when he steals all the chemis, in Spanner's mind, this is justified. If he has something wrong with him, he might as well make it right. But is killing yourself really making things right? I'm gonna be very vulnerable right now. If you ever think something is wrong with you, and that you're damaged goods, or that if you were just gone that everything would be better, shut the fuck up, look around you, and tell me. Do you like breathing? Do you like the feeling of oxygen entering your lungs, slowly seeping through your system and out again? Doing that over and over and over. You do? Good. That alone should be enough to keep living. And if you try to fool yourself into thinking any of these excuses or unhealthy beliefs that I listed above are true, you're a liar. You're a fraud. The old adage may sound like horseshit, but the show somehow proved again and again and again through something as small as trusting in the heart of the fucking cards that sadly, you are not alone. And through action, through pleading with Spanner to live for those who died, to still be a part of their world, Hotaro saves Spanner. Sure, he's bitter at first for his overblown suicide attempt being thwarted by his rival of all people, and that he can't transform anymore as a result of his actions, but he's still alive. Kudo Fuga is treating him, Laxus goes looking for him when he disappears, Hotaro hopes that he'll come back when the time is right, but that won't stop him from fighting, and that won't stop Spanner either. Attempting to rebuild the Valvora driver with Loxus before Gigist arrives, offering to take him under his wing one last time, Spanner loses again and escapes for good measure, but once Loxus is confronted with the death of Atropos and bleeds for the first time, Spanner resolves to win this fight. Together. Confronted with Gigist in a heat haze, Spanner admits the truth, that he hated Hotaro, but also hated himself. He blamed himself for his parents dying, so he hid his sorrow behind a mask. But Hotaro, the headstrong boy that he is, kept trying to break through to him. Even if their paths may never fully cross, Spanner has to admit one thing. The kid's got guts. With a love for the people he cares about helping him master the dark flames, Spanner forges a new driver and becomes Kamen Rider Valvarad Kurogane, killing Gigist once and for all and becoming the new master of the dark flames. He wears a mask to hide his sorrows, using the power his enemy granted him for the sake of humanity. In this moment, everything locks into place. Spanner becomes a Kamen Rider. Loxus is thrilled by this and helps the gang as the Philosopher's Stone shard is nearly stolen. However, Spanner cradles Loxus on her deathbed, her admitting that her real goal was to fall in love. She dreams of the date that Spanner and her never got to have as Spanner carries her dead body, saying that she's human, just like the rest of them. Loxus got fridged, and Alice Sakamaki was okay with that. I really hate the trope of the love interest dying for the male character's development, but if the story really evolved to the point where Loxus had to die for Spanner's development, it feels a little cheap. Like, oh well, I guess she has to die now. Yosuke Minato was right in believing that the sisters were inherently tragic figures. It's just frustrating that Hasegawa backed away from the idea that any of the sisters could have a happy ending. Still, though, each death adds some dimension to the corresponding character's arc, and that's no different for Spanner. It does give him another loss to mull over like he's done now with his parents, but it's now motivation to keep living in the present. To, yes, be good at his job, but be more appreciative of what he has, the life he gets to live in spite of what he's been through, the opportunity to stop being a fraud and really, truly grow up.
Mama.
おめでとう。
Kamen Rider Gotchard Graduations is the best piece of spin-off media made for Kamen Rider Gotchard. Yes, better than The Future Daybreak. Yes, better than Girls Remix 2. Yes, better than We Are Class 3G. Why is it better than all that slop? Because it not only caps off everything in Gotchard's story, progressing in and its characters forward while acknowledging the past, but recontextualizes Spanner's arc and in turn his character. We've gone over why Spanner is so immature because of his lack of socialization. He only had Kyoka after his parents died and learned to solely rely on her, and ultimately, himself. That changed as a result of the mission to find Kudo Fuga through Rine. Sure, Spanner claims to hate Hotaro in the beginning of the series, but by the end he's grown to not only respect Hotaro as a fighter, but idolize his steadfast dedication to achieving his goals. Even if they aren't the best of friends, Spanner allowed someone other than his newfound maternal figure to influence his way of thinking. The same can be said for Rine, or Minato, or Sabimaru. This sense of attachment and routine as a part of Minato's classroom gave Spanner the idea of consistency, something he grew accustomed to over the course of the year he spent at the academy. Despite the ever-shifting allegiances of the association heads and the frustrating way Minato treated him before betraying Leon, Spanner had found people he at the very least tolerated, people who surrounded him during some of the most vulnerable moments of his life. It's only natural that at the end of everything, where Hotaro and the gang graduate school and Kyoka decides to get married to Minato, that Spanner starts to feel unease. While he's, yes, a Kamen Rider, he has nothing to really fight anymore, and as a result of the Alchemy Association seemingly reforming without him, he's just left to exist as a special A-rank alchemist. Almost as if nothing's changed. So when he's trapped in a time loop on the day where pretty much everything is going to change in his everyday life, it kind of feels like hell. Sure, it gives him an excuse to fight and confront people like Namarazaki Bolt, the vengeful loser in the special A-rank alchemist exam, but also gives him time to go through excruciating conversations with Minato on his marriage to Kyoka. Something Spanner clearly has an issue with, even though he knows and trusts Minato. Anytime throughout the loops he comes close to a meaningful recognition of how his relationships with people have changed, and in turn how he should take into consideration other people's emotions, the loop somehow manages to reset, forcing Spanner to explain everything all over again with what little information he's learned. It's a neat way to use the time loop gimmick, because it forces Spanner to think things through just as much as the audience. And when the source of the loop is finally revealed, it all locks into place. Spanner is a person who subconsciously wishes for nothing to change, for everything to be how it should be. Him at the top of the association, his mentor and maternal figure always helping him, always being needed by his subordinates, and always in opposition to the crackpot ideas of Hotaro Ichinose. So when he's faced with the idea of his little world being uprooted, it sends him spiraling, bottling everything up to an unhealthy degree, again, affecting the people around him who want nothing more than for Spanner to be happy. It all comes together with Valvarad GT, a form that, while goofy, represents his understanding that things need to change. He spent his entire time in Gotchard stuck in the past, unable to really move forward. Just find other excuses to think about how hard his life has been, to fight for the fallen and the lives they never got to live. Now, Spanner makes a choice to fight for the people still here, to protect their happiness at potentially the cost of his own. So when Spanner sends himself in Ouroboros, the literal embodiment of eternity, into the door of darkness, he's prepared for it now. While the world resets and everyone gets their resolution, Spanner is fighting eternally against the being who wanted to grant his wish. To have that singular moment where all of his friends are together, last forever. The special ends on Kyoka and Minato's wedding, the gang still worried about where Spanner is. As Minato is about to kiss the bride, a rift in reality rips open, and Spanner walks out. The door closes as he sees his mentor and his dear, dear friend, telling them, At the beginning of this video, I said Spanner's story was supposed to mean something, could teach something to the viewer or impart an idea. And while I can easily boil it down to, again, you are not alone, I think it's much more simple than that. You can live. It's okay to be alive. It's okay that things are changing. It's okay that you feel stressed or sad or happy right now. Everything changes. You change. And I'm glad that after all of that pain and toil and torment, our little jobber fraud has changed too. Tell someone you love them. And thank you for watching.